Hi, this is Aaron Wilson from KPRC2 Sports. The Texans are in the middle of their offensive coordinator search, looking for the replacement for offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, fired last week by Texans coach DeMeco Ryans. As the Texans go through this search, we've seen some interesting names, and I've seen a real strong consideration for internal candidates, especially quarterbacks coach Jerrod Johnson. Let's start with Jerrod. He was the first candidate to interviewed in person. And Jerrod Johnson grew up in Humble, played football at Texas A&M, was also on the basketball team. Record-setting quarterback, second team All-Big 12, played for 6 different NFL teams. Big guy, 6'5", 250, has a very long-standing relationship with C.J. Stroud. It's been instrumental in his growth. He's known him since he was 16 years old, first started mentoring him at the Elite 11 quarterback competition. That's when C.J. emerged as a blue-chip recruit. He was overlooked before that. And he outplayed Bryce Young, his friend, and wound up being drafted after him and winning NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. And Jerrod's coached him every year here with the Texans, and he's being given strong consideration for the job. I would view him and Bill Lazor as the most likely internal candidates, and Bill interviewed on Thursday for the position. So Bill is a former offensive coordinator with the Chicago Bears, the Miami Dolphins, and the Cincinnati Bengals. And he is a senior NFL offensive assistant for the Texans and is also under consideration for the job. They have looked at external candidates, and they believe they will continue to. They have so far interviewed Syracuse offensive coordinator Jeff Nixon, previously a running backs coach with the Carolina Panthers, was promoted to offensive coordinator at an interim basis with Carolina and had some okay success, was solid. They interviewed Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterbacks coach Thad Lewis. You saw what Baker Mayfield did this past season, had some success, did a pretty good job with Baker Mayfield. Of course, Liam Cohen got the lion's share of the credit, the new Jacksonville Jaguars coach. And then you look at some of the other candidates that they've talked to. They have looked at Los Angeles Rams passing game coordinator and tight ends coach Nick Caley. To me, that's been the strongest external candidate so far. Kayley is a former Patriots tight ends coach, where he coached all-pro tight end Rob Gronkowski, and he comes from the Sean McVay system. With Caley, I believe that he could implement a lot of the flavor of the McVay style that has been so popular and successful, including with Kevin O'Connell with the Minnesota Vikings, and you've also seen success with that system with the Buccaneers and how they molded that to suit Baker Mayfield's skill set. So both of them, some good candidates. And you look at Nick Caley, and would he want to leave the Rams at this time? I've heard he's not going to get the Buccaneers job. He's also been a candidate for that. He's interviewed, but I think they're going to go with an internal hire with the Buccaneers, promoting Josh Grizzard. And they haven't made that official yet. They're still determining whether they're going to hire him, but I think Todd Bowles is leaning toward doing that. So none of the Rams coaches that have interviewed, there were 3 of them, are going to get the Tampa Bay job. So that leaves Nick Caley possibly for the Texans. A few other guys that have interviewed, or are going to interview, rather, they are going to talk to Brian Johnson on Friday. Brian is the Washington Commanders' assistant head coach, and he also is the passing game coordinator. He was an offensive coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles, but he was dismissed after one season. He drew a lot of criticism for his offense. I thought he was probably better as a position coach. And this year, he did a good job helping out with Jaden Daniels, also helping Dan Quinn with administrative duties. He was a good helping hand for him behind the scenes. He's been an offensive coordinator also at the collegiate level at Utah, where he was a record-setting quarterback, 26-7, the all-time winningest quarterback in the Utes history. And Brian also has been offensive coordinator at the University of Florida and the University of Houston. So he's the next up. And then they talked to a very young coach on Thursday, Minnesota Vikings assistant quarterbacks coach and assistant offensive coordinator Grant Udinski. And he's 29 years old, former walk-on at Towson University, where he played defensive end. And Udinski is described as very smart, very instrumental to everything that Kevin O'Connell does, and their offensive coordinator Wes Phillips. And Udinski definitely considered up-and-coming, has interviewed for the Buccaneers and the Seahawks. And I don't know if he's ready yet, but he's definitely someone to watch in the future. So it all comes down to what's best for the Texans offense. What's going to be the best fit for C.J. Stroud? And I know a lot of people wanted Chip Kelly. And I want to explain kind of what's happened with Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly's someone that the Texans had on some initial list, and it turns out Chip Kelly prefers to stay in Columbus as the Ohio State offense coordinator. He's comfortable there coaching the national champion Buckeyes, and so that's his choice. He wants to stay in college at this time, and he's been out of the NFL for a while, and there were some personality clashes certainly in Philadelphia, not with DeMeco Ryans, but with other players on offense. LaShawn McCoy and Deshaun Jackson have been highly critical of him, so have some other former Eagles players. Whether that's a factor, it doesn't really matter because Chip Kelly is not pursuing the job. I've heard of Doug Peterson, the former Jaguars head coach, looking around. He was interested in the Dallas offensive coordinator job, and we'll see what happens. I don't think that Doug has really, or the former head coaches has really been a big factor in this search. Like Mike McCarthy, he's going to sit the year out. Didn't really have an interest in being an offensive coordinator at this time. So, we're up to 7 candidates that are known at this time, and we're looking at who are they going to hire. Are there going to be more interviews? They're going to talk to a lot of people. It is a wide-ranging search. I want to explain a few things. The interviews have been virtual, so I think they could have a second round of in-person. They did meet in person with coaches that include Jerrod Johnson and Bill Lazor, obviously are internal candidates. But the other ones have been Zooms, and I would think that they're not going to hire someone off Zoom. They're going to have them come to Houston, Texas, come to NRG Stadium, meet with everyone, meet with the staff, and have more of a conversation. Of course, then if you decide to hire someone and you make them an offer, you got to negotiate. And so what are the titles? What's the salary? What are the outs in the salary? All those things. How many years? A lot of things are negotiable when it comes to these contracts. So it'll be interesting to see whom they ultimately offer. In my opinion, at this time, just based on the candidates we've seen, I would go with a combination of Jerrod Johnson and Bill Lazor, and I would keep both of those coaches, probably naming Johnson as the offensive coordinator because of his relationship with C.J. Stroud, his knowledge of a couple of systems, including what he did with the Vikings, working for them, and also here in the version of the West Coast offense, the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan system that Bobby Slowick implemented. And I could see Jerrod putting his own imprint. I've seen him present different quarterback summits, watch some of his thoughts on drills, talk to him before about his philosophy, and I think it would be a popular hire and potentially a very successful hire if they were to go with Jerrod Johnson. In terms of the other staff members, if it's Jerrod Johnson, Bill Lazor, or even outside candidate like Nick Caley, I expect them to retain assistant offensive line coach Cole Popovich. Popovich, contrary to some reports, was not fired. Popovich is under contract through the middle of February and is interested in returning. I expect that to happen and for him to be promoted as the head offensive line coach and replacement for Chris Strausser, who will not return and contemplated retirement before last season, did not retire, probably should have retired if he was thinking about going that way. And instead, he stayed on the staff, and they allowed 54 sacks as a team, 52 times C.J. Stroud sacked after only 38 sacks the previous year. Also with Strausser. For whatever reason, they had problems with the offensive line. That's going to be priority number one for the new offensive coordinator, is fixing that and becoming a more explosive, steady, disciplined offense that commits less penalties, less turnovers, and gets the most out of one of the top young quarterbacks in football, C.J. Stroud. I still think the arrow's pointed up for C.J., and you get him more weapons, and things can get back to where they were at the start of the year. They're 5-1 before Nico Collins pulled his hamstring. Undoubtedly, not having a lot of production for the receiver position, losing Tank Dell for the rest of the season. Stephon Diggs also with a torn ACL for the rest of the season. That impacted the offense more than people probably thought it would at the time. And having such a poor year blocking and production wise in the passing game from tight end Dalton Schultz. They needed to have a better, more consistent offense, and it's got to not just be about the offensive line and receiver positions. Tight end's got to get better too. Joe Mixon, the most dangerous weapon other than Nico Collins, and they got to do everything to accentuate those guys. We're going to see what they do. I don't think that the hire is going to come down on Friday or even over the weekend. I think it could go into next week at this current pace, especially if they conduct second interviews. But I hope this sheds some light on why not Chip Kelly, and why they could go internal for this job, this very critical job that's important to the future. As they've said, they're trying to get past this divisional round. They're trying to take the next step as AFC South champion and to go beyond that. They're the only team in the AFC never to reach the AFC Championship game, and they're 0-6 in the divisional round. Something's got to change, and that's why Bobby Slowick's not here anymore, because they're trying to have a high standard, and they want to have a better offense to go with this aggressive, dynamic defense whose architect is D'Amico Ryans. Reporting for KPRC2 Sports, I'm Aaron Wilson. Look forward to our next report on the Texans and this offense coordinator search.